Hi everybody, Timothy here. I greet you all in Jesus Christ's mighty name. It is March 4th, 2026, and you're listening to yet another episode of the Brother Timothy Clark podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Rogue RLS-1. This is a lap steel guitar. I picked it up on Thursday through Musician's Friend's Stupid Deal of the Day, and I got it for $79. And it came on Monday. And so I have had a little bit over 24 hours with it. And I've already picked up a lot of techniques that apparently players that have been playing for a long time haven't been able to pick up. For example, I can do that slant bar technique where I can change a note on, say, the higher strings and keep the note the same on the lower strings without it actually changing. And apparently there's people that still can't get that technique. And I'm not sure why they couldn't get that, because it's simple. You just move the end of your bar and let it change the string notation. But I mean, I guess the Lord just wanted me to have that particular technique in my arsenal. The next thing that I plan on trying, and I hesitate on doing this, is actually bending the strings. I know that seems commonplace because I bend strings on my guitars all the time, but I guess because this instrument's brand new to me, and I'm kind of like, what happens if, it's like, what happens if a string breaks, because on the steel guitar, I don't see where, how on a acoustic or electric guitar, you have the strings where they overflow the neck and you got to cut them off or just deal with them. That's a non-issue on the lap steel because the strings go into this thing at the end of the neck, and it's this really bizarre thing. I've never seen it before. I don't know if that's part of the nut or what it is. But it goes into this thingamajig, and your strings, I don't know if you got to cut them to put them in there, if they slide in there, how that works. I haven't destrung this thing. I have no plans on it until the strings break, but that's kind of my concern. It's like, what happens if a string breaks? It's like, how do you destring and restring the lap steel? But that's going to be the next thing that I mess with, is bending. And I found out you don't bend in front of the bar, which you would think you would, because in front of the bar is like where your notes are. You bend the string behind the bar, which actually makes sense, because when you bend behind the bar, you're not dampening the string. You can put your hand on the string. You can actually put your hand on the string, all the strings behind the bar, and it's not going to mute, because everything behind the bar is of no consequence. But apparently bending is the exemption to that, which makes sense because you're actually bending the string. But you would think if you mute the string with your hand behind the bar that you're actually muting the string. Well, no, you're not. So there's some kind of paradoxical things going on with the steel guitar. But after having the Rogue RLS-1 for roughly 24 hours and playing it, here is my takeaway. It's an amazing instrument. I got it for $79 through Musician's Friend's Stupid Deal of the Day. And I love it. I'm learning how to play it. I got it tuned to C6. Now, the structure on how to tune it is rather bizarre. I'm not used to tuning in C6. I find that C6 is not the normal go-to tuning for me, because I'm used to standard EADGBE on guitar. And I could put the still in open E, but I want that I want that C6 third interval. I want that C6 country western sound. You know, that was a main staple of Bob Wills and Don Helms and Jerry Byrd, and you know, the list goes on and on. And I love that sound. So C6 is my go-to tuning. It's the tuning that I decided that I wanted to learn steel guitar in. And you know, if I was gonna do open E, you know, you have E9 for your pedal stills. I don't know if they make an E6 tuning or not. I guess that the closest would be to open E, which is used traditionally in country music, in the E9 for your pedal stills. Looking at the stability of tuning on this instrument, I give it a 5 out of 5. I'm using the stock strings on the Rogue RLS-1. And this is not published online, so I'm going to be the first place to actually publish this, I guess. I called up Musician's Friend yesterday because I like these stock strings. And I wanted to know what the stock strings were, what gauge they were, things like that. Now, Guitar Center, there were a couple of individuals who got together and they made the Rogue product line, and that includes the RLS-1. So these guys at Guitar Center, they own Musician's Friend. Musician's Friend also sells the Rogue RLS-1. And so I bought mine on Thursday, called them up yesterday because I wanted to know what the string gauges were on my lovely, lovely, lovely Rogue RLS-1. I spoke to a gentleman by the name of Sam, and Sam told me that they are Musician's Gear strings, which is Musician's Friend's in-house stock strings, so that makes sense. They are 10 to 46 gauge, which also makes sense because they're really light, and the similarity to guitar strings 10 to 46 is astounding. So that makes sense. So they're 10 to 46 gauge, handle C6 like a champ, and will likely be my go-to strings. I bought gold tone strings or silver tone strings. I'm not sure what the name of them were. They were $8. They're 0.15s. So according to Zach over at Musician's Friend, those will do C6 as well. And so I'm thinking that once I try these silver tone / gold tone strings, whatever they are, after those go, I'm probably going to go back to 10s. If I would have known that you could have bought the Musician's Gear strings for 10 to 46s, and I would have known that those were the stock strings, I would have bought a pair of those instead. But that's okay. The stock strings, I know most people change those, not me. When I bought my Fender CD60CE, which is an acoustic electric, I found that I really liked the Fender stock strings. And so I left those on there and wound up actually, for all of my electrics, buying Fender strings because I like them so much. And with the stock strings on the RLS-1, I like them so much that I'm probably just going to start buying Musician's Gear strings for my RLS-1 in the future. But hopefully that'll be a long, long time away. I'm hoping that the RLS-1 doesn't break strings as much as a guitar does. And I've also got to say this. When it comes to the RLS-1, the case that comes with the RLS-1 is fantastic. It is not one of those cheapo hunk of junk cases. I remember buying a guitar and came with a nice case, came with a nice pocket, came with a lot of nice accessories. And I still have it. But the guitar was $126, including shipping. And it was a SX Furion RSS-BSB or something like that. And it's a nice guitar for what it does. But I feel like with the Rogue RLS-1, I got a better deal even on it than I did on the SX guitar. And so the drawbacks, though, with the RLS-1 is not in the build itself. It's not in the case itself. The drawback are these really stupid legs that come with the Rogue RLS-1. They give you 3 legs, and the idea is that you thread the legs onto your RLS-1. You put the legs on the bottom of the RLS-1. There are these little threaded slots. These little threaded slots on the RLS-1 that you're supposed to thread these legs onto. Well, it's downright stupid. If you had 4 legs, maybe, but 3? So I think what they should have done was that they should have put bars in with the RLS-1 instead of legs. It's a lap steel. It's not a pedal steel. It doesn't need to be on a stand. If you want to put it on a stand, you certainly wouldn't put it on 3 flimsy legs. You'd get a dedicated guitar stand or music stand and put it on there. But I really feel like they could have given a bar for the RLS-1. But they didn't. They gave the legs instead. And I'm like, okay. So then you had to go out and buy a bar. And I wound up buying the Ernie Ball bar. I don't know if the Ernie Ball bar, it's a medium bar. So I don't know if you buy the heavy bars or the light bars, what the differences would be. But my Ernie Ball bar is like a big AA battery. It is really what it reminds me of. It's like a big AA battery. It's long and round like a AA battery. It literally, it's like a big AA battery. It doesn't have the little terminal tips like a AA battery does, though. But if you put the terminal tips on a steel bar, it would feel almost like a AA battery. And so that is what I'm using to, move around on the fretboard. But I truly love the sounds that I'm getting out of here. I truly love the tones that I'm getting out of here. And I can connect up different pedals and stuff with it. So I can put a Zoom G1XN in the mix, or I can put a Tech 21 RK5 version 2 in the mix. It all depends. And so I'm truly enjoying the Rogue RLS-1. The build is fantastic. If there was one complaint with the build, I would say down at the bottom, and this is something you can file off later if it really bothers you, and it doesn't bother me at all, really. But on the left-hand side, where one of those threads are for the legs, there's a little sharp thing. Again, you can file that down, I would imagine, if it really is that bad of a issue. But to me, it's a non-issue. There's some people that say, well, my pickup in the instrument is buzzy. Of course it's buzzy. It's a single coil pickup. All of my electric guitars are single coil except for my acoustic electric, which is a piezo, and Fishman Pre, totally different. If you are dealing with single coil pickups, listen to me. A single coil pickup, I don't care if it's like a soap bar pickup, which are generally ceramic. If it is Alnico, whatever, if it is a single coil pickup, odds are you're going to get a buzz. You might be able to get away with the Fender noiseless pickups, but those are not single coils at that point. I'm not sure what those are, but I think they might be. I'm going to guess they're probably some form of humbucker, but definitely not single coil at that point. So, to the people saying, "Oh yeah, well I'm getting a buzz. I'm getting a buzz. It's single coil. That's what they do. Deal with it." I mean, other than what's to be expected. And by the way, the buzz is no worse on it than it is on my first act guitar. Actually, I think it's worse on my first act by a lot. So to get a little bit of a buzz on the steel is no problem. It's to be expected. And by the way, you're not going to hear it in the mix. You're not going to hear the buzz in the mix. I don't care what you're playing. You're not going to hear the buzz in the mix. So that kind of throws that out. And by the way, you can close the tone knob a little bit to where your buzz is practically gone, and then you can just leave it like that, which is what I do personally. I have my tone knob pretty much closed, and then I'll pull the little bit of high end that I do want, because you want a little bit, from a pedal, whether it be my RK5 or my Zoom G1XN. And I'm really liking the RK5 because it's got that FET compressor. It's got the reverb. It's got the meat and potatoes of the amp emulator. I can roll back on those mids and roll back a little bit on the bass and just bring in a little bit of highs, and it sounds amazing. It truly does. And so my Rogue RLS-1 is the metallic red. You couldn't, with the deal of the day, the stupid deal of the day, you can't swap out colors. So you have to get red or blue or whatever the deal is, which is fine by me because I can't see it anyway and I'm, blind. So it to me is irrelevant, the color. I told my mother, I said, it's a metallic red. She goes, oh, that sounds like it's going to be beautiful. So I show it to her. When the instrument arrived on Monday, she goes, oh, yeah, that's real nice. I'm like, well, cool. So when I first plugged it in, I tuned it to C6, but I found out that I had it like 2 octaves down from what C6 originally should be. I think it was still C6, but it was really low in the registry. And I put up a video on Threads of me just totally goofing off in this weird alternate C6. It felt like this weird dimensional riff where it's like, what is going on? Because it didn't sound like the right C6. It sounded like a weird something or other. I wound up watching a video of a gentleman tuning his lap steel, and I realized, I'm like, whoa, I'm like 2 octaves down from C6. I'm like, oops. So I had to go and retune it, and I'm like, it's gonna break a string, it's gonna break a string. But it didn't. It held that tuning like a champ. And so I am honestly very impressed by the lap steel that I picked up. And it is definitely an instrument that I'm going to be keeping. It's definitely an instrument that I'm going to be continuing to learn how to play. It is definitely an instrument that has surpassed my expectations. You know, I've been wanting steel guitar in my music for years. I remember growing up and you know, I used to listen to country music a lot more than what I do these days. Sometimes I still listen to country music, but back then it was country music all the time. So I grew up listening to George Jones and Merle Haggard and Hank Williams and Katie Wells and Ferlin Husky and Farron Young and Webb Pierce. You know, the list goes on and on. Patsy Cline, Tammy Wynette, Jeannie C. Riley, you know, like I said, the list goes on and on. And when I was growing up, I remember wondering, like, what is that instrument, you know? And, you know, growing up, I found out that it was steel guitar, and I thought steel guitar was always a pedal steel. I thought for the longest time that a lap steel was a dobro. I truly did. I thought a lap steel was a dobro because, again, I can't see it. And you play a dobro with a bar. You play a dobro in, you know, the same tunings that you put a lap steel in. And they are totally two different sounds. A dobro and a pedal steel sound completely different. So I'm surfing YouTube a couple of months ago, growing up thinking a lap steel was a dobro. And for whatever reason, I don't know if I clicked it by mistake or what happened, but I found the Old Rugged Cross played on a lap steel. And I clicked it expecting a dobro. And I'm going, wait a minute. That's a steel guitar. That's a pedal steel. And I pull up more lap steel, and I'm going, that's a pedal steel. That's pedal steel. That's a pedal steel. What's going on? And I find Scott Grove. Scott Grove, is that his name? Anyway, I find this guy on YouTube, and he's doing a beginner lesson for lap steel. And again, I'm thinking, it's a dobro. And so I watch it, and I'm going, that's not a dobro. And it finally clicked that a lap steel was not a dobro. And, you know, I knew of Bob Wills, you know, San Antonio Rose. But even then, I thought that a lap steel was a dobro. I thought, well, pedal steels must have been around in the 1930s. You know, I didn't know. I never looked up the difference. Why would I when you think that a lap steel is a dobro? So once I found out the difference, I'm like, of course I'm going to go look up the differences and between a lap steel and a dobro. And what I found was absolutely astounding. I found out that, yeah, a lap steel and a dobro are similar instruments, but they are also two vastly different instruments. And I found out that guys like Bob Wills and Don Helms and Jerry Bird, and, you know, they're using lap steels. Like, what? San Antonio Rose was on a lap steel. What? And I knew the name Buddy Emmons, you know, so I thought pedal steel. And he was pedal steel all the way. They even have the Emmons steel, and it's a pedal steel. And so, you know, it's like, what? So when I found out those differences, I kept looking at the stupid deal of the day, and I told my folks, I said, when they do that deal of the day and they give a lap steel on that stupid deal, I'm buying it. So Thursday came around, and I think it was the last week in February, and they had the lap steel there, and it was $79, and I said, I'm snagging it. And I did. And I don't regret it. I really do not regret it. I've wanted that sound in my music ever since I started recording music. And to find out that you can get that sound in a piece of music from a little tiny instrument placed on your lap, and to find out that you can still make it do pedal steel sounding chords, for example, with string bends or bar slants, which I figured out the bar slants, by the way. The bar slants are pretty easy. When I figured all this stuff out, it's like, who needs a pedal steel? Seriously, who needs a pedal steel when you can get the same sounds out of a lap steel? And I started doing research and found out that all of the guys that I like to listen to were in C6. And so that became my go-to want-to tuning. And I'm still in C6. I have no plans on changing that. There's a lot of musicians, I think I made mention, who are using E9. I think Buddy Emmons may have used E9, but he was also a pedal steel player. He was also, using two necks. And Junior Brown is another one. I think he had a two-necked instrument as well. And so, for your single-necked, single-bodied lap steels, C6 is my go-to. Don Helms, C6. Jerry Bird, C6. And I don't remember who the player was for Bob Wills, but he was C6 as well. And so C6 became my go-to default tuning, and I have no plans on changing that. But the Rogue RLS-1, I don't have a single problem with it. Now, will that change in the weeks to come? I certainly hope not. But if it does, you'll hear about it here on the podcast. But I love it. I really do. I found that I'm playing it, hour or two a day. And I'm probably going to do it again today, because it is just so much fun. I love the sound. I love the playability. I love it. It sounds incredible. It's a wonderful instrument to worship the Lord with. And just to see how the Lord is using the instrument, it's amazing. It's truly amazing. So I'm going to share with you all a track here that I recorded. I recorded it yesterday on Tuesday, and it is already up on YouTube. We won't play the whole thing. I'll give you maybe 30 seconds of it, but you'll hear the steel guitar, and you'll hear how just that one instrument made a difference in my music. So we'll give you a 30-second clip here. Those struggles and trials beset, no, the God's not done with yet. And that will do it for this episode of the Brother Timothy Clark podcast. I want to thank you all for joining me. And remember, God is still in control. And God is not done with you yet. If you want to hear the complete song, check it out on YouTube, on the Brother Timothy Clark YouTube channel. Feel free to drop me an email. My email address is TimothyClarkMusic@me.com. Website address is TimothyClarkMusic.wordpress.com. And my name is Timothy. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode of the Brother Timothy Clark podcast. See ya.